whole initiative was taken by Aurea Care, which is always meant to look at women as a full. We all of us here are gynecologists. We have, of course, Dr. Sachin is a urologist. So we as a gynecologist, we are looking at a lot of hormonal variation, a lot of changes that a women go through, and we're addressing the delivery process, the gynec issues. But we forget the post-procedure or the post changes which happens, or a woman goes through the physiological change, be it the lax vagina, be it the menopausal issues, postmenopausal issues that they suffer through. So through Aurea Care, we want to address this, and to make it complete, we want to do a holistic approach, not just through medicines, but also implement a lot of things. And we don't want to make it surgical. So we want to be, if we imagine ourselves, none of us want to go through a knife. All of us want something non-surgical. So this is all about Aurea Care, and let's see how it turns out. We have wonderful panelists with us. We have Dr. Priya from Bangalore, Dr. Rashmi Naik, who's a cosmetic gynecologist as well. Dr. Priya is our laparoscopic surgeon. Dr. Aarti, who's a holistic healing and an obstetrician for high-risk pregnancy. Bharti madam, you already know, and you know Bhavya and Sachin, who's your own crowd. This is my co-moderator, Dr. Ashwin from Salem.
And to our panelists here, how many of you are comfortable talking about sex, which is a taboo, to your patients?
I think as a gynecologist, I think I practice this very, it's a very methodical practice I've been doing for the last 18 plus years. So I just do the history taking just like any PG would do in a college. So if you walk into my clinic, that's how the history taking would be, starting from the name, demographic thing up to the sexual history. So I do not stop at anywhere until I reach the sexual history whenever I face a married couple entering my clinic. I mean, nowadays sexual history can be asked even to unmarried girls, because they are also quite sexually active and they have a lot of doubts, in fact, when compared to married couples, in fact. So eventually, after asking the menstrual, obstetric, medical history, surgical history, we come down to the marital history followed by the sexual history. And in that sexual history, it's an inevitable question that I ask all of them, that do they face any problems while having sexual activity? So this is how I put across the question first. And I think most often patients are very comfortable when we are straightforward asking them the question to answer back. They do tell me, immediately they answer back, whether it's the male partner or the female partner, telling me that this is what they face. They say either the female is not very cooperative, I'm not able to penetrate, or they say either she complains of pain, so we've not had a sexual activity at all. So non-consummation of marriage I see quite often, especially the software couples, to be honest. I mean, almost most of them, they're married for like 3 years, 4 years, and they suddenly come asking for fertility treatments, and they've not even consummated their marriage. So when we go and then examine them, we come to know that a lot of them are suffering with vaginismus. I think it's a common problem nowadays we are facing with most of the couples, or maybe the dislike towards each other. Sometimes the woman happens to tell inside the examination room that I am not happy with my husband. So that's where her involvement in the activity does not come up. So I think there are a lot of issues which needs to be dealt with. Yes, actually, history plays a very, very, very important role, and that's where we can make our patient feel comfortable right in the beginning, so that I think the taboo topics do not come up later. I mean, they're very clear about answering their questions and coming up with their problems.
I think over years, even I have seen a lot of changes. Probably 10 years back, it used to be difficult, even in not 10 or 15 years back, it used to be difficult. But now when a woman enters, even she is open enough, and even the men, for that matter, they're open. And it basically needs a hearing ear, which will make them tell their problems.
Priya, being a laparoscopic surgeon, do you still have, when you're examining a woman, do you still have the men saying, can I stay out while you examine women?
First, we used to ask a question saying, are you married or unmarried? Nowadays, if you ask that, you're offending the women, because indirectly you're trying to ask if she's sexually active or not, considering the marital history in place. So the right way to ask is, are you sexually active or not? Or next question should be, are you planning for pregnancy or not? So the marital history should not be considered in a a way that you're judging the person, right? And if the obstetrician is herself hesitant to talk about sexual activity or what is the problems the lady is facing during her intercourse, how do we expect the patient to be free and answer to us? We as a gynecologist are the woman's best friend. From puberty till menopause, post-menopausal, everything, the patient will come to us. We are a specialization where we deal with everything except I think orthopedics. They know they have to go to a orthopedician if the bone is broken, but everything else they come to the gynecologist first. So I think having an open mindset makes the lady comfortable and come open up with lot of issues. As madam said, lot of women, when we examine itself, we are used to probably say ಏನು ಆಗಲ್ಲ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, and we just shut them out when they're saying that they're having pain while examination. That is the first sign of vaginismus what a gynecologist has to pick up. And most of these couples, to be honest, even the male has some kind of sexual dysfunction. That is why they are quiet. Otherwise, they would have come back earlier. Lady has vaginismus, the male has any erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation, and they are just quiet and the marriage is going on for years. Otherwise, they come back early saying that I'm not able to have intercourse or the issue is escalated because the woman's desire or this thing is, kept down.
No, I also like to add one more point here. Like whenever we ask for the sexual history, be sure that when you are suspecting a vaginismus, kindly do not try to examine these patients in your examination room. Especially upper vaginal or upper speculum should never be attempted, because I've had at least 2 patients, they did not even speak to me about it in my consultation chamber, but when examination room, they opened up their samples, and then it so happened that they went into a little bit of the syncopal attack. So this quite often happens if the patient has not opened up about her vaginismus issue. And the second thing what I would like to say is, whenever a woman is facing vaginismus issues, invariably over a period of time, it leads to male erectile dysfunction as well. Because when a woman does not give herself up for the sexual activity, it finally tends that a man loses his self-confidence and he says that he is having a problem. Eventually, that's what the men tend to tell while giving the history. And they say they're able to masturbate and ejaculate, but they're not able to do the vaginal penetration and ejaculate. So they feel they are non-confident or, less confident, and they feel that they're suffering from erectile dysfunction. I think this has a repercussion eventually.
Well, I would say from the time I started practicing, this history of sexual health has always been there on my outpatient consultation. I do make it a point, and I have been quite open because, as Dr. Aarti and Dr. Priya said, we need to be friends, we need to give them time, and we need to talk. Sex is not a taboo word here. That's the main thing we need. It is part of life. Just you ask them, are your micturition habits normal? Are your bowel movements normal? You have to take. But unfortunately, I think now the days have changed. But initially, there was a lot of inhibition from the obstetrician and gynecologists ourselves to use the word sex in our clinical scenario in the consultation room. And we hardly see anybody writing. Maybe when they come for fertility issues, they do talk about the history, whether it's consummate or otherwise. And the other thing I've seen is pregnancy. Most of the women come to us when they are pregnant. But how many of us talk about pregnancy and sex? It is a very, very important factor, but very rarely addressed. The couple want to know whether they can have sex in the first trimester, what about the second trimester, what about the third trimester. But they are doing it blindly, or they are just doing it some handovers from their elders or their friends and their peers. But as obstetricians, I think we need to talk to them. We talk about diet, we talk about nutrition, we talk about exercise. We need to talk about what are their sexual habits in pregnancy is very, very essential. Now coming to so I have been using this word and I've given them time. I've been able to tell them, okay, if you don't want to speak to me right now, you can speak to me later on. I have done this. And I tell them that, okay, we'll talk after some time if you're not comfortable. And as Dr. Aarti Rashmi said, that if she's not willing for a pelvic examination, give her some time. Ask her to go out for a walk, come back, or come the next day. Tell her what you're good, because probably she has vaginismus and she has fear. And now coming to your second part of the question, how are you open to premarital sex or sex outside of marriage? Well, let us be with the times. We have to be open to things. So we have a lot of youngsters coming to us for various issues. It could be a pregnancy, it could be it could be an infection, urinary tract infection, vaginal infection. So I do ask them. I never ask them, are you married or not married? Because we know. See, sometimes when they come in, you know whether they are married or not. So you just ask them very softly as a friend. Don't intimidate them. Don't be judgmental. Just ask them, are you sexually active? And then if they may say yes or no, then you say, don't be, it's okay. It's okay to be sexually active provided you're above the age of 18 years. You're practicing safe sex. You know what you're going to land up if you don't have safe sex. And educate them about safe sex, safe contraception, and safe abortions. So that is how I incorporate the whole thing into. So immediately when you do that, they open up with whatever issues they have. And of course, the male partners, we do have to put that question to them. They may come for fertility issues, or they may become for, you have many women in the perimenopausal age group coming with vague aches, pains, marital discord, not sleeping, not able to eat well. If you dig in down into the history, there is a discordancy in their intimate partner life. So it boils down to that, and then the husband will open up, then the wife open up, and then of course you can address whatever issues they have. It may be an aesthetic gynecological issue, it may be a male partner issue, or it may be just some sort of an inhibition saying, like you said, I am 45, why are you talking to me about sex? It's not that is out of the dictionary. So I think we people have to be open about it, and we have to change the way we work in our consultation chambers.
Dr. Bhavya, do you also consider that this is something that you need to be trained out of your mindset, saying that 45 years people don't have to be sexually active? You still care to ask them about their sexual history?
First of all, as an infertility specialist, sexual history is very important for me. Whenever an infertile couple come to us, the basic, very most important question will be about their sexual history, and it is no more a taboo word. It's actually, they comfortably answer to our questions. How is your sexual life? Whether do you have any difficulty? They openly talk about that. If they have any difficulties, they admit it. So before doing an UPT test or anything, I do ask them whether she is sexually active or not openly, and they don't hesitate, or if she is sexually active, she will admit it. We see many patients admitting also, like though unmarried, they say I am sexually active. So with her permission, we can do a urine pregnancy test also in such patients. And also for a 45-year-old woman, when they come with any history of like any vulval itching or any infections, of course we'll ask about if she is sexually active or not, because whenever we are treating any sexually transmitted diseases, it's important to treat the male partner also. So we don't hesitate to ask them.
So nowadays many patients come with infertility. That is common. So first thing I will ask in history, same thing as everybody told about the sexual history. It's very important. Many patients, like not in cities, okay, urban people, but rural, they come till marriage, they haven't had any sex till marriage. They don't know, many men, they don't know how to do sexual intercourse. So we have to ask the detailed history about the sexual intercourse. And as in female vaginismus, many men will have some frenulum tear, will have initial intercourse. That time their patient will not regularly, they won't do it. So they won't take any treatment because of pain and all. So these are the things we should consider whenever patient come for the infertility, not only these things.
Well, we talk about it, and I think it's very important for women to understand that it's a problem. They need to speak about it. How many of them actually understand that having a lax vagina is a problem? Having a loss of libido is a problem? Having stress incontinence is a problem? They may think it's just the age process and it's normal, because this is what they have been told. So I think while we as a gynecologist do general examination, you identify, talking about it and saying this is a treatment and it needs to be addressed is where we have to come to.
Let us look at women as a whole, and let us tell her that she need not be just beautiful from outside. She has to have beauty inwards also, and that will make her life much better. So let us all help these women have a better life and enjoy the gift of womanhood.
Patient selection. Second is awareness. Third is counseling the patient, and choosing the patient and going ahead with what is the best for that particular patient is very important.
I think Dr. Aarti has summarized everything. We need to first of all choose the right patient. Whom should we treat and whom should we refuse? I think that's very important to know when we come to cosmetic or functional gynecology. As we have all been speaking about it, I think as far as my knowledge goes, US FDA approved or non-approved does not make any sense when we come to practice cosmetic gynecology, because US FDA approval has been given for the machines not for vaginal rejuvenation purposes. It has been given for various other purposes, like a HIFU machine has been given US FDA approval for the usage of facial wrinkles, not even for a gynec procedure or a vaginal use. And the RF machine or an RF device energy source also has been approved for other cause, not for a vaginal rejuvenation. And if, the only FDA approved machine which has been particularly used is the HIFU machine, which has been approved for pelvic floor strengthening as well as vaginal rejuvenation method. Even a CO2 laser which came into market was actually approved for to be used in cervicitis or cervical dysplasia or CIN treatment. So basically none of the laser machines or energy based devices have been approved for vaginal rejuvenation techniques or treatment as per guidelines, but still we clinicians use it since we know that it is benefiting women. So important factor here we need to know is how to assess your patient, how to know what are their problems, and which is the right energy based device which the patient would be benefited with, and which patient needs it and which patient would not need it. I mean, that is the right decision has to be made by the doctor. And we also need to create this awareness among women that, these are the problems which can be actually cured by using the non-invasive methods.
But all of us sitting here are already cosmetic gynecologists. We close a cesarean scar with a monocryl, achieve a beautiful scar. Episiotomy, we make sure that layers, muscle to muscle closure is attained, skin to skin, not in a single layer as, supposedly before what one used to do. So we are taking care of all of this. No matter how beautifully you operate, a lady's scar is important to her. It might not be important to us. I don't know, at least in medical colleges, none of the professors are HOD or assistant professors close skin. It's always left on the PG, right? So PGs are better closures of skin than the senior professors. What matters to the lady is the scar. She doesn't care about how you have closed her uterus or what you have done. If the scar is ugly and hypertrophic, she feels low self-esteem. It is a matter, of this era that a lady has to feel confident.